that marks 10 o'clock. So good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting for the Health and Social Care portfolio. I just had to read out a brief statement just about fire regulations. So in the interest of safety, if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with Portsmouth Cultural Trust fire marshal regulations, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed from a camera at a fixed position at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Finally, may I ask everyone to use the microphones provided when they are speaking. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. I think we're all here, so that's fine. Declarations of members' interest. I have nothing to declare. No. Okay. Item 3, which brings us on to Adult Social Care Transformation Fund. So if maybe Simon wants us to say a few words of intro on that.
Thank you. You have the paper, I hope, already with you. In brief, the Social Care Transformation Fund was established to invest in transformational change for adult social care services in Portsmouth. The transformation is required to deliver ongoing remaining savings up to 1920, and then beyond as the austerity period continues. The fund was approximately 8.5 million, of which half of it has been committed to date. In the paper that we've submitted, there's a list of those schemes. Would it help if I went through those?
I think a few words, a brief comment, yeah.
They're generally around areas you would expect social care to be investing in. For example, assistive technology to make sure that care is delivered in a more efficient manner where possible, and we can provide more help to people. So telecare, just checking as a service which provides services in people's homes to make sure that we're providing the right level of care in, and those sorts of services. We funded a wider piece of commissioning consultancy for assistive technology, which we're hearing back from this month, and that will help us to plan further investments in IT. The other areas include including staffing and other areas of support to help us to change services for the better. It includes a new model of care whereby we are more proactive in meeting people's reablement needs before they go into long-term care. So it's about short-term funding while we're able to make those changes. There's another one on here called Oak Dean, but I believe one of my colleagues is here to talk about that this morning, so I won't go into details about that. That's in a nutshell. So
Thank you for that. Gerald, is there anything you want to raise on this?
No, I just think it's important to note, as everywhere across the country, the huge pressure there is on adult social care budgets, and the failure of the government to fund this, and the enormous pressure that puts on the NHS. We have to work within the bounds that government set. We all know that, but it's not the right solution, and the government really does need to see if they can think a bit better and come up with a better solution, because this can't carry on for much longer in social care across the country.
Okay. I agree that there is a lot of funding pressures on social care. It will certainly be interesting to see what's in the green paper when it comes out, although from my understanding of it, it only deals with the older persons issue anyway. And of course, with half of social care spending not being on older persons, being learning disability and mental health, that bit for a start is unlikely to be addressed unless there's a change of scope. I think within the projects in here, it's about trying to cover all the major bases. So our sort of strategy for further savings property, which is Oak Dean really. It is about reablement and about getting people out of the system entirely, which is what the new models of care is, which is more or less just doing some intensive domiciliary care work in-house. We've got some of the technology issue, which is covered by the assistive technology, and I think that's something which, as we work through this programme, will likely expand significantly, because you look around the country and there are other local authorities which have gone into this in a much larger way. I do think there is scope in that, not just for people who have conditions, but to actually delay the point where people are unable to live independently. So I'm happy with the report, so unless there's any further thoughts from Gerald, in which case I'm happy to approve that on. So it's only for noting, so that duly noted. Item 4 is a forward plan omission. So this is just to note that there's been a change to the forward plan, and I duly note that. Item 5, acquisition of Oakdean. Who wants to say a few words on that?
Yeah, I'll say a few words on this. Just by way of background, in 2017, Adult Social Care, along with the Integrated Commissioning Unit and our Housing Department, undertook a review of the needs of Portsmouth residents in terms of their housing, and also looked at kind of where people were receiving care. So it was noted that we had quite a few individuals placed quite away from their Portsmouth home, as a result of a lack of provision locally. It was noted that some providers weren't encouraging people or re-abling them and focusing on their recovery, so they were holding on to people for long periods of time. There's a pressure within the adult mental health budget, which meant we needed to kind of look at different ways of spending money. And it was clear to us that some providers weren't person-centred in the care that they provided. There was no incentive for them to support people to become more independent, because it was an income for them and part of their business. So as a result of all that work, we came up with a plan to purchase Oakdean, the Oakdean site, with a view to providing 12 individual flats for people and a 5-bedded specialist unit that would provide a high level of support and enable us to bring people back into the city and provide their care more locally.
Okay, thank you. Gerald, any?
Where are we in terms of the purchase in the process?
I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I don't know whether Richard in Finance, you can answer that.
Sorry, I think I'll pass it over to Alison, actually, who's here, who can answer that question for you.
Okay, we're still negotiating with Solent, but we have started to look at the legal side of it and get the paperwork out. But it is progressing forward.
But when did negotiations start with Solent over this? Is it Solent or NHS Estates? Or Solent?
It's Solent, yes. Yeah. It's Solent.
And so when do we start talking to them about it?
I'd like to say in the autumn of last year.
No, I just as a local councillor for Milton, it would have been terribly nice to know that the council was negotiating to buy something in the ward I represent. Local residents would have been quite interested, but I think that is something we can learn for the future.
Okay. And I've got just a couple of questions just on some things that have come up in a discussion the other day, and this is our first chance, which is there's been a suggestion that this may still require a planning application, and that minimum space standards may come into this and, cause a perhaps minor addition to the cost. Would you offer a view?
We have been advised that we would need to apply for change of use. We hadn't anticipated we would need to do that. We had some conversation with the architects around space, and that shouldn't cause too much difficulty because the room sizes aren't too short of what's required anyway, and it would be the right thing to do.
It was a bit of a surprise. I thought it would be residential institution.
And the appeal decisions that came in yesterday about HMOs would seem to say that at the moment the space standards that we've adopted are they give an indication, but they need not to be used on a hard and fast way, or so the inspector says in terms of so I think the appeals that went through yesterday were ones where they were below the minimum space standards, but not by much, and the inspector said, well, that's fine then.
That's useful to know, and it's my, there have been various planning applications around the city, not for new builds, but for conversions, whereby space standards have not been rigidly adhered to. So I have to say, I don't think they're absolute, and this is a conversion scheme, and it's the sizes are already pretty close. So, I have to say, push back a little bit on planning on that, because there are plenty of places where where space standards have been traded off against the constraints of an existing building.
If we're looking to fill 17 beds, about how many of those people are people who are currently in out-of-city placements that would be coming back? And I know we've had issues with children where after a bit with out-of-city placements, you can't bring them back because it's what people are used to. Is that going to be an issue here?
At the moment, we've got definitely five potential people planned, but we recognise that things change. So we've modelled all the financial work on the basis of 5 people, but a year is a long time. So it could be a different 5 people. And we anticipate that the remaining 12 units may be well be filled with people already living in the city, but in higher cost placements who actually need to be stepped down into something which gives them more independence.
I think it's also worth adding that one of the part of the philosophy behind this scheme is to create a flexible space. So while we're talking at the moment about mental health, we don't actually know who we're going to need to place for what purpose in 5 years' time. So it's important to create a space where it could be learning or physical disability, if the needs change. Okay, any further points? In which case, I am happy to approve the recommendations on that. Which takes us on to item number 6, Harry Sotnick House.
Okay. The report in front of you details the recommendations for Harry Sotnick to delegate authority to Deputy Director Adult Social Care in consultation with the 151 officer to continue and conclude negotiations with Hampshire County Council to take over the running of Harry Sotnick House as of the 1st of April this year. Under the background heading in the paper, it details how Harry Sotnick came about in a partnership arrangement contract with Care UK, and that it was a design, build, operate, maintain contract. Then goes into 3.2 onwards, discussions about the difficulties that Care UK had satisfying the CQC standards in providing the care at Harry Sotnick, and how that culminated in a notice of decision being issued to Care UK by the Care Quality Commission to prevent them closing down from operating at that particular location. There's a live challenge against that notice of decision currently, which has been submitted to the first tier tribunal by Care UK. But that brings us to withdrawal date for Care UK of the 31st of March this year. The reasons for the recommendation that we contract with Hampshire County Council for between 18 months and 2 years to run Harry Sotnick House for us from 4.1 onwards are based on Hampshire's experience in running and managing nursing homes, of which they have 10 in the county, 8 of which have a rating of good from CQC. One of the other reasons for recommending that we contract with Hampshire for this service is that PCC, whilst they operate residential care homes, they don't operate residential care homes with nursing, and equally have no experience of operating a residential care home with nursing in special measures from CQC. We believe it would be unlikely that CQC would accept a PCC application at this stage to run this home, whereas we believe it likely that they will accept an application to add a location to Hampshire's current registration for running care homes with nursing. The focus of everyone involved in this is the 57 people that live in Harry Sotnick House, and ensuring that there's a smooth and safe transition from the 1st of April onwards to continue providing care. We've had quite significant engagement with relatives and those residents that are able to at Harry Sotnick, so we've been meeting with them fortnightly and talking them through this process and hearing back from them their concerns and their wishes. And I think it's, without qualification really, everybody there who can speak for their relative, all those people that can speak for themselves, wish to stay in Harry Sotnick and continue having their care and support provided in the city, which is why we haven't conducted a full EIA, believing that engagement with people was sufficient. The legal implications are that we need to, if this is agreed, we need to move to negotiate a formal contract with our colleagues in Hampshire. operating brake clauses, quality improvement plans, etc. The point that we've got to currently is that letters of intent have been exchanged between the two directors of adult social services from Hampshire and Portsmouth, which legally we believe is sufficient for us to proceed to formal contract negotiations should that be approved. Our finance colleagues have commented that we aren't clear currently as to the total costs of this arrangement, but there is a belief that we may exceed the current operating budget of 1.4 million.
Okay, thank you. Gerald, any thought?
I think it's very disappointing for all of us that the Care UK have not been able to run this facility in a way that meets the needs of local residents and the needs of the council, and I think this is a sensible way forward. The City Council invested a great deal of money in building a new Harry Sotnick house so that we had a number of beds available for the City Council to be able to purchase at a good cost. So it is sensible to get somebody else in. I think my question would be is in terms of the ongoing flexibility of what we as a council are able to do, is there any way of getting a joint registration between Hampshire and ourselves so that we begin to build up some of that expertise, both internally for us but also in the eyes of CQC, so that we do have the opportunity in the future, if we so wished, to be able to run it in-house in the same way that we do the residential homes?
I think I'm fairly sure that we couldn't have a joint registration, but what we would plan to do, this wouldn't be an open-ended agreement, this would be limited to between 18 months and 2 years, and what we would plan to do is have a significant and detailed transition period whereby we were doing exactly as you suggest, learning from Hampshire's experience and expertise in running these sort of establishments and ensuring that we had a very clear idea quite early on of where we were going with that.
And just to add to that, we are also, independent of this, applying to CQC to add nursing to our registration in a way to start to do exactly that, to build up our experience and also offer a more flexible offer in our other residential homes.
Okay, I mean, I think this is nobody's first preference to go down this path, but I think that we've come up with a practical solution. I mean, obviously the Hampshire issue creates a few anomalies, so things like the staff in likelihood are going to have to TUPE to Hampshire rather than Portsmouth, because otherwise we get into all sorts of complications again about registration. I think it's very much appreciated from Hampshire County Council that we've been able to have a dialogue about this and to come to a solution which will hopefully work for us all. And I think that this is something that we're going to have to do. So I'm happy to approve the report. Thank you, and that concludes the...
Before we stop, just one quick thing. I'm very conscious, Luke, that you as a Conservative, myself as Lib Dem are here. I thought that the Labour group weren't represented here as Labour group councillors because they weren't on anything, but I was reading papers this morning and on another area of the council's work, there is a Labour spokesman. I am worried that adult social care is such an important piece of what the council does that they don't have anybody covering this area of work, and I just wonder whether we need to have a quiet word to try with the Labour councillors to see if we, from the future onwards, we might be able to get one of them interested in looking at this area.
I think that's a valid point. I mean, this is just in terms of a portfolio meeting. This is going to be the last one this municipal year, but I would certainly hope that all of the parties appoint spokesmen to this portfolio after May. That concludes the meeting. Thank you all for coming.